February 19th, 1945. The first night on Iwo Jima. You're a Marine. 19 years old, dug into volcanic sand that won't stop sliding back into your foxhole. Your rifle is caked with ash. You've got maybe 30 rounds left. And through the darkness, you hear it: voices, footsteps, the unmistakable sound of hundreds of enemy soldiers moving toward your position. In the next 10 hours, a single understrength company faces a night that will redefine what it means to hold the line. What happens next isn't just about survival, it's about a choice every man has to make when running seems like the only rational option. Stay with me through this entire story, because the way these Marines survive, this night will challenge everything you think you know about courage under fire. Iwo Jima is 8 square miles of volcanic rock sitting 660 miles south of Tokyo. It's not just another island, it's Japanese soil, part of the Tokyo prefecture, and Emperor Hirohito sends 21,000 of his best soldiers to defend it. The American military needs this island desperately. B-29 super fortresses bombing Japan from the Marianas are getting shot down because Japanese radar on Iwo gives early warning. Crippled bombers crash into the Pacific because there's no emergency landing strip between the Marianas and Japan. Iwo Jima solves both problems. The Marines can take it. On February 19th, 1945, at exactly 0900 hours, 70,000 United States Marines storm the beaches. 7 battalions hit the sand simultaneously under the heaviest pre-invasion bombardment in Pacific War history. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, carrier aircraft, and B-2 for liberators from Saipan pound the island for hours. It looks like nothing could survive. But the Japanese commander, Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, has turned Iwo Jima into the most sophisticated fortress in modern warfare. Miles of tunnels, 7-story galleries carved into Mount Suribachi, concrete bunkers with walls 10 feet thick. And he's given strict orders: let the Americans land, let them pack the beaches, then open fire with everything. That's exactly what happens. For 30 minutes, the Marines advance unopposed. Then the entire island erupts. By nightfall, 2,420 Americans are dead or wounded. The beachhead is barely 4,000 yards wide, and in some places only 400 yards deep for football fields. And on the left flank, near the base of Mount Suribachi, one company holds a position so exposed that officers quietly call it the weak point. The Japanese know exactly where they are, and night is falling. Let me paint the picture for you. It's February 19th, around 1900 hours 7 p.m. The sun is setting over Iwo Jima, and the temperature drops fast. We're in the North Pacific in winter, and men who've spent months in tropical heat now shiver in 60-degree cold. The 5th Marine Division holds the left side of the American beachhead, and their job on D-Day is to cut straight across the narrowest part of the island and isolate Mount Suribachi, that massive 550-foot volcano, dominating the southern end. They succeed. By mid-afternoon, elements of the 1st Battalion, 28th Marines, reach the western beaches. They've sliced Iwo Jima in half. But success comes at a brutal cost. The 28th Marines, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Chandler W. Johnson, lose 20% of their effective strength on the first day alone. 8 officers and 158 enlisted men killed or wounded. Now they're holding a thin, hastily organized defensive line facing south toward Suribachi. stretched across the narrow neck of the island with the ocean on both sides. Here's what makes this position so dangerous. To their front, Mount Suribachi, honeycombed with caves and packed with approximately 2,000 Japanese troops commanded by Colonel Kanehiko Atsuchi. To their right, the rest of the American line, but spread thin, exhausted, running low on ammunition. Behind them, the landing beaches, still under constant artillery fire from Japanese positions in the north. The beaches are chaos. Wrecked landing craft, burning Amtraks, bodies stacked near aid stations, medical corpsmen operating in captured bunkers because there's nowhere else. The Marines dig in as best they can, but Iwo's volcanic sand is like fine buckshot. It slides back into foxholes almost as fast as you can shovel it out. Some men give up trying to dig and just pile sandbags around shallow depressions. Their weapons are fouled with volcanic ash. M1 Garons that should fire semi-automatically now have to be worked by hand, one shot at a time. Browning automatic rifles jam constantly. Machine gunners spend more time clearing their weapons than firing them. And then there's the simple mathematics of it. The 28th Marines start D-Day with roughly 3,000 men across 3 battalions. After one day of combat, they're down to maybe 2,400 effectors, and those men are scattered across multiple defensive positions. The company holding the most exposed section of the line, the direct approach from Suribachi, numbers perhaps 120 men at full strength. By nightfall, after casualties and the need to man other positions, that number drops closer to 80 or 90. 80 Marines. Between Mount Suribachi and the American beachhead. That's all. Around 1930 hours, something changes. The Japanese artillery that's been hammering the beachhead all day suddenly stops. The night goes quiet except for distant explosions and the surf pounding the black sand. Men who've been under fire for 12 straight hours should feel relief. Instead, they feel dread, because every combat veteran knows when the enemy stops shooting, it means they're maneuvering. A young private from Ohio will call him Thompson, because that's a common enough name and represents thousands of Marines. In similar positions, whispers to his squad leader, a corporal from Chicago. Why'd they stop? The corporal doesn't answer. He's listening, and what he hears makes his blood run cold. Footsteps, dozens of them. Then voices speaking Japanese. Then more footsteps. Hundreds. Thompson peers over the lip of his shallow foxhole, and that's when he sees them shadows moving through the darkness, coming down the slope from Suribachi like a human wave. Now you need to understand what's happening from the Japanese perspective. General Kuribayashi has issued explicit orders now. Bonsai charges, no wasteful suicide attacks. His strategy is to bleed the Americans slowly through sustained defensive fire, making them pay for every yard with maximum casualties. But Kuribayashi commands from the northern highlands, and he's given his subordinate commanders some tactical discretion. Colonel Atsuchi on Suribachi sees an opportunity. The Americans have cut him off from the rest of the garrison. His men are trapped in a volcano that will eventually be surrounded and reduced. So Atsuchi makes a decision attack, the weak point in the American line. Break through to the beaches and disrupt the invasion while it's still vulnerable. He doesn't call it a bonsai charge. He calls it a reconnaissance in force, a spoiling, attack, an infiltration. But when several hundred Japanese soldiers move out of their caves and advance on the Marine positions around midnight, the effect is the same. This isn't the massive counterattack the Marines have been warned about that never really comes on. Iwo, because Kuribayashi forbids it. But it's big enough. And it's aimed directly at the thinnest part of the American line. The first wave hits. Around 0100 hours, 1 a.m. on February 20th, the Marines opened fire immediately. Rifle shots crack in rapid succession despite the ash-fouled actions. 2.30 caliber machine guns roar to life. Tracers arcing through the darkness. The M1 Garands ping out their Atround clips and Marines reload with practiced speed even. Though their hands shake from adrenaline and cold, Thompson fires into the shadows. He can't see individual targets, just movement, shapes, the occasional muzzle flash from a Japanese rifle. Next to him, the corporal yells, "Pick your targets." Short bursts. Don't waste ammo. But it's almost impossible because they're coming. From multiple directions, using the craters and debris from the day's fighting as cover. What surprises the Marines is how quiet the attack is compared to the Bonsai. Charges they've heard about at other islands. These Japanese soldiers aren't screaming. They're moving tactically, in small groups, trying to find weak spots in the Marine line. Some carry rifles and grenades. Others have satchel charges, canvas bags, packed with explosives meant to blow. Up American bunkers and artillery positions, one Japanese soldier reaches the Marine trench line. He vaults over the sandbags and lands in a foxhole occupied by 2 Marines. There's a brutal 3-second fight. Niv's fists, desperate grappling in the darkness. One Marine dies. The other kills the Japanese soldier with his K-bar knife and immediately hath to turn and fire his rifle at 2 more. Enemy troops climbing over the edge. This is what close combat actually looks like. It's not cinematic. It's fast, confused, terrifying. Men die within arm's reach of each other. Grenades explode in shallow holes, killing whoever's closest regardless of nationality. The sound is overwhelming. Gunfire, explosions, screaming. In English and Japanese, the wet impact of bullets hitting flesh, the metallic clang of bayonets striking rifles. But the Marine line holds, just barely. The concentrated firepower from those 2 machine guns creates killing zones that the Japanese can't cross. Marines with Browning automata rifles to bar, a 20-pound automatic weapon that fires .30-06 rounds at 500 rounds per minute. Tanker defensive positions and pour fire. Into enemy concentrations. Riflemen firing semi-automatic M1 South maintain steady, disciplined fire despite the chaos. After approximately 10 to 15 minutes of sustained combat, the first Japanese probe pulls back. The Marines count bodies scattered across the open ground, at least 40 dead enemy soldiers in front of their position. Maybe more. It's hard to see in the darkness despite parachute flares dropped by ships offshore. Thompson slumps back into his foxhole, chest heaving. His rifle barrel is hot enough to burn skin. He's fired 30 rounds almost for full clips. The corporal does a quick head count. 2 men dead, 4 wounded. That's 6 casualties out of maybe 30 Marines in this section of the line. 20%. Losses in 15 minutes. They have maybe 5 minutes before the next attack. Here's the brutal truth about a last stand. It's not one dramatic moment of heroism. It's 100 small moments of terror and exhaustion stretched across hours. And this night is just beginning. The Japanese come again around 0200 hours. This time they change tactics. Instead of a direct assault, they infiltrate, crawling through the darkness, using shell craters and destroyed vehicles for cover, trying to get close enough to throw grenades or place satchel charges. It's slower than a bonsai charge, but in some ways worse, because the Marines can't see them until they're right on top of them. Array. A. Sergeant, let's call him Kowalsk, serializes they need more illumination. He starts firing tracer rounds into the air, trying to light up the battlefield. It works for a few seconds. In the brief flare of light, he spots 5 Japanese soldiers crawling toward the left flank. He shouts a warning. Another Marine cuts them down with a bar. But now the enemy knows where Kowalski is. Bullets tear through the air around his position. He dives for cover just in time, his helmet clanging as a bullet ricochets off it. Around 03:00 hours, one of the machine guns jams. The gunner, a 20-year-old kid from Nebraska, works frantically to clear it, his fingers bleeding as he claws at the mechanism clogged with volcanic ash. His assistant gunner keeps firing his rifle to cover the gap in their defensive fire. It takes 3 minutes to get the gun working again. 3 minutes that feel like 3 hours. But he clears it just as another wave of enemy soldiers rushes the position by 04:00 hours. The Marines are running desperately low on ammunition. Lieutenant Colonel Johnson radios back to battalion headquarters, requesting immediate resupply. But getting supplies through is nearly impossible. The beaches are still under heavy artillery fire from Japanese positions in the north, and nobody wants to risk a supply run through no man's land in the darkness. Johnson is told to hold on. Reinforcements and resupply will come at first light. First light is 3 hours away, so the Marines start rationing. 1 magazine per man until resupply arrives. 3 grenades. Make every shot count. Some Marines pick up Japanese Arisaka rifles from dead enemy soldiers and use captured ammunition. Others fix bayonets, preparing for hand-to-hand combat if the Japanese break through. The attacks continue. 3rd wave, 4th wave, 5th. Each one is smaller than the last, maybe 20 or 30 men instead of 100, but they're relentless. The Japanese aren't trying to break through anymore. They're trying to grind the Marines down, to exhaust them, to make them run out of bullets so the next wave can finish the job. Around 05:00 hours, the attacks stop. Dawn is maybe 45 minutes away. The night goes quiet again, except for the moans of wounded men in the darkness, American and Japanese. Nobody can reach them. Moving in the open draws sniper fire. Thompson sits in his foxhole surrounded by empty shell casings. He's fired every round. He has maybe 120 bullets total. His hands are numb. His ears ring so badly he can barely hear his own thoughts. The corporal next to him appears to be asleep, or maybe unconscious from exhaustion. Thompson doesn't wake him. He just keeps watching the darkness, waiting. But here's the question nobody asks out loud, because asking it makes it real. How much longer can we last? Stop for a second and put yourself in that position. You're 19 years old. You've been fighting for 8 hours. Your rifle is out of ammunition. You can hear enemy soldiers moving just yards away in the darkness. Your friends are dead or dying around you. Every instinct in your body screams at you to run, to get out, to survive. But you also know, you absolutely know, that if your position breaks, if you run, the Japanese reach the beaches. Thousands of Marines landing supplies, setting up artillery, treating wounded, all of them die. The entire invasion could collapse. Not might, could. The stakes are that high. So what do you do? Do you hold because it's your duty? Because you'll be court-martialed if you don't? Or is there something else, something deeper that keeps you in that foxhole when running is the only logical choice? Keep that question in your mind, because what happens in the next 3 hours will answer it. Dawn breaks over Iwo Jima around 05 for 5 hours. The sky transitions from black to grey to pale orange, and with the first light, the Marines finally see what they've been fighting all night. The ground in front of their position is covered with Japanese bodies, dozens of them. In some places, bodies are stacked 2 and 3 deep where machine gun fire cut them down. But the Marines also see something that makes their stomachs drop. More Japanese soldiers. Maybe 200 or 300, regrouping in the distance near the base of Suribachi, preparing for what looks like one final push. If this wave breaks through, it's over. The Marines are out of ammunition, exhausted, operating on adrenaline and will alone. Lieutenant Colonel Johnson gets on the radio one final time. His voice is hoarse from shouting orders all night. We need support now, right now. We cannot hold another assault. This time, help comes. Naval destroyers offshore begin firing into the Japanese positions. The USS Henry A. Wiley closes to within 200 yards of shore, so close the Marines can read the hull, number, and opens fire with every gun on board, trapping groups of Japanese soldiers with searchlights and annihilating them. Artillery from the 13th Marines, dug in further up the beach, joins the barrage. The explosions are so close the Marines feel the shock waves. The Japanese assault falters under the naval gunfire. Men scatter. Some retreat back towards Suribachi. But hundreds keep coming, either because they don't get the order to withdraw or because they're determined to reach the American lines. The final push hits around 630 hours, and it's desperate. Japanese soldiers charge forward without formation, without coordination, just individual acts of courage or desperation depending on how you view it. Some throw grenades, others try to close with bayonets. A few carry satchel charges, clearly intent on blowing themselves up, along with as many Marines as possible. The firefight lasts maybe 10 minutes. Marines fire captured Japanese weapons. Because their own are empty, they throw grenades. Some fight hand-to-hand. Thompson bayonets a Japanese soldier who makes it to his foxhole. The corporal, now awake and back in action, shoots 2 more with a captured Arisaka rifle, and then, as suddenly as it started, it ends. The Japanese withdraw, not because they're beaten, because they're out of men. The assault collapses. Soldiers fall back towards Suribachi, dragging wounded, leaving dead. The Marines keep firing until there's nothing left to shoot at. By 07:00 hours, it's over. The battlefield falls silent except for the crackling of distant fires and the cries of wounded men. Reinforcements arrive fresh, platoons, medics, ammunition. Resupply. They stare in disbelief at the scene. One lieutenant walks the defensive line, counting enemy bodies visible from the Marine positions. He stops at 80. There are too many to count accurately. Lieutenant Colonel Johnson gathers his company. He does a head count. Out of the approximately 80 to 90 Marines who held this particular section of line through the night, roughly 60 are still combat effective. 20 casualties dead or wounded so badly they need evacuation. By any rational calculation, this position should have been overrun. The Japanese had numbers, initiative, and desperation. The Marines had almost no ammunition, no reserves, and nowhere to retreat. So how did they survive? The official Marine Corps report says something like this: superior fire discipline, effective use of combined arms, and defensive positioning enabled the unit to repel numerically superior enemy forces with acceptable casualties. That's how military historians describe it: clean, professional, detached. But that's not the whole truth. Those Marines didn't survive because of tactics or training, though both helped. They survived because when the worst moment came, when every instinct told them to run, when staying meant probable death, they chose to stay. Not for America, not for the flag, not even for the Marine Corps, really. They stayed for each other. Years later, a veteran of Iwo Jima private who landed on D-Day and fought for all 36 days of the battle said something in an interview that cuts to the heart of it. I didn't think about patriotism or duty. I thought, if I run, the guy next to me dies. And I couldn't do that to him. That's the truth. That's what holds the line when everything else fails. Not nationalism, not orders, not even self-preservation. Just the simple, primal instinct to protect the person next to you, the man who shared his water when yours ran out, who helped carry your wounded buddy to the aid station, who made stupid jokes yesterday to distract everyone from the fear. That guy. You don't abandon him. You can't. The battle for Iwo Jima continues for another 34 days after that first terrible night. The Marines fight cave by cave, bunker by bunker, yard by yard. They use flamethrowers, grenades, satchel charges, and pure courage to root out an enemy that refuses to surrender. By the time the island is declared secure on March 26, 1945, the casualty count is staggering: 5,931 Marines killed in action, died of wounds, or missing and presumed dead. Another 209 Navy corpsmen die. Nearly 20,000 more are wounded. It's the only battle in the Pacific War where American casualties exceed Japanese casualties. But the beachhead holds. That first night, when the Japanese should have broken through and reached the landing beaches, they don't. The 28th Marines hold their thin, defensive line. They buy enough time for reinforcements to land, for artillery to be positioned, for the entire invasion force to dig in and prepare for the weeks of horror ahead. 4 days later, on February 23, 1945, a 40-man patrol from that same 28th Marines Regiment climbs to the summit of Mount Suribachi and raises the American flag. You've seen the photo of Joe Rosenthal's iconic image, one of the most famous photographs in history. But that flag doesn't go up unless the Marines hold the line on the night of February 19th. History remembers the flag raising. History should also remember the beach. The Marines who fought that night never call themselves heroes. Most go home, find jobs, raise families, and rarely talk about Iwo Jima. When their children or grandchildren ask about the war, they give brief answers. It was hard. We did our job. A lot of good men didn't come home. But here's what they don't say. What they can't articulate because the experience is too deep and too personal. On that night, they discovered something about themselves. They learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's being terrified and staying anyway because someone else depends on you. They learned that human beings are capable of extraordinary things when they're connected to something bigger than themselves, even if that something is just the guy in the next foxhole. So let's bring it full circle. February 19th, 1945. The first night on Iwo Jima. 80 to 90 Marines holding an exposed position at the base of Mount Suribachi. Several hundred Japanese soldiers attacking throughout the night. 10 hours of sustained combat with almost no ammunition, no reinforcements, and nowhere to run. By any military calculation, that position should have collapsed. The Marines should have been overrun, the landing beaches should have been compromised, and the entire invasion should have been thrown into chaos. Instead, when dawn breaks on February 20th, those Marines are still there. Wounded, exhausted, traumatized, but there, and because they hold, the invasion succeeds. The island falls, and the war moves one step closer to its end. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of us will never face a moment like that. We'll never have to choose between our survival and someone else's life. But the principle still applies. Courage isn't genetic. It's not something you're born with. It's something you choose in the moment when everything inside you screams to run. And the only thing that makes that choice possible, the only thing that turns ordinary people into heroes is connection, loyalty, love, even though most Marines, we'd never use that word. Those 80 Marines on Iwo Jima held the line because they couldn't imagine letting each other down. That's it. That's the lesson. When the moment comes, whatever that moment looks like in your life, the question isn't whether you're strong enough or brave enough. The question is, who are you connected to? Who depends on you? And are you willing to stand when standing is the hardest thing you've ever done? Those Marines answered yes, and that's why the beach still held. If this story changed the way you think about courage, sacrifice, or what human beings are capable of when everything is on the line, then do me a favor. Hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel, because every week we bring you true stories like this. Stories of ordinary people facing extraordinary moments. Stories that deserve to be remembered and retold. If you want to see what happened next on Iwo Jima, how those same Marines climbed Mount Suribachi 4 days later and raised the flag that became one of the most iconic images in history, check out the video. I'm linking in the description. These stories matter. These men matter. And as long as we keep telling their stories, they're never truly forgotten. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.